Coming up, we're visiting with the stars of Reservation Dogs and Prey. Plus, we'll hear about a film that features 3 Kiowa boys. I am Aaliyah Chavez. That's all coming up next on the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is honored to be a supporter of Indian Country Today. Working with award-winning professors, Cronkite students learn news reporting, social media, shooting and editing videos, and producing content for communications industries. Cronkite's 15 professional programs give students the opportunity to cover critical issues throughout the U.S. and beyond. Learn more at cronkite.asu.edu.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Amira Wahopa, thank you for joining us. Stereotypes that once riddled movies and television about Native Americans are fading off into the sunset. With all Native cast and crews, we are telling our own stories. Today, we're taking a look at the film industry and stories that come from Native communities or feature Native actors. Reservation Dogs, with an all-Native writing room, is the brainchild of Sterling Harjo and Taika Waititi. The series was a hit, and it was renewed for a second season almost immediately. ICT's Jordan Bennett-Begay spoke to Paulina Alexis, who plays Willie Jack on the show.
It's been great, man. I just been home. I'm doing the same thing this year. I'm going to play hockey. It's my last year. Well, if I register before I turn 22, then I can play. But it's my last year junior, and I'm playing junior A this year, probably with Edmonton Wolves. And then when it comes to like tournament season, I'll be coaching again. Be coaching all the nieces and nephews and stuff. And
oh, wow, that'd be fun.
Yeah. Award shows coming up, press is coming up. It's about to get busy again.
Along with acting, Alexis has lots of other interests, including playing competitive hockey.
Well, I started when I was like 4. My mom and dad put me on skates when I was 4. And then we moved to the res, so I couldn't really play as much. Couldn't really afford it. So like I didn't play anything till like I was like 9. Then we'd be going to all my brother's games and like all my cousins' games. And then I'd be like, Mom, I want to play hockey. And I'm just the only girl. And my mom put me back into it when I was like 9. I played with boys, and then I stopped playing for like 2 years, and then I got back into it when I was 12. And yeah, I've always been in love with hockey, like ever since I was a kid. Like, I remember I made my dad pick up a net on the side of the road. Like someone in the res, like someone just threw a net in the ditch, and like I remember I was asking my dad for a net for the longest time, and he picked it up for me, and we slapped it in the back. We just tied all those holes together in the net, and it was just like brand new. And then I learned on that, and like I just grinded it in my basement for like a year. I got like some cheap Value Village rollerblades for like $5, and then I would just rollerblade and shoot out my cheap net. And then like by the next year, I was like the best on my team.
And if you can't find her on the rink, Paulina is probably training for horse relay races.
I'm training for it right now. I really want to race one day. But like every year I tried to race, Res Dogs like cut off my training season, so I couldn't even race. Like literally right when training season starts, they'd fly me out to Oklahoma to go shoot Res Dogs. And I'd be like, damn, I can't race this year. And then like I'd have to come home and just grind so I could try to race. I didn't get to race last year, but this year, hopefully I can race before summer's over, before I turn 22.
The actress's love for horses goes beyond racing. Alexis talks about how taking care of the animals can help to heal her people.
That's another one of my dreams that I have, is to race, because I'm the only rider for my reserve right now. And I really want to bring horses back to like our people, and because like our youth in in Canada, like they struggle with a lot of addictions, but like horses, they really um they keep you busy and they give you like a responsibility and like a purpose, and like I think that that will really help our youth at the same time too, because like I always wanted fucking horses when I was a kid, but like we never had nowhere to put them or anything, so like that's what I want to do. I want to like build like a barn and track on our reserve, so like kids can start having horses there and taking care of them, like see them riding every day.
And although she couldn't share a whole lot about the next season, she did say how it felt to return to the Res Dogs set.
It felt so good to see everyone again, but then like it felt like once we got all together, it like felt like we haven't even like left each other. Like the vibes were just up there again, and it was like we just seen them like yesterday. And like what I like a lesson I think I learned is, especially with Res Dogs, I don't really like to rehearse. Does that make sense? Like I like doing everything as natural as I can and like on the spot. I don't know if you can notice it, but yeah, they'd be rehearsing a couple times and I'd be like, I can't really rehearse that much because like most of my lines are improv, right? I have to like feel it on the spot and like do it that way. So that's like one of the lessons I took that I realized when I was doing season 2.
And when the series had its season 2 premiere, ICT sent Caitlin Onawa Boycell to Tulsa, Oklahoma to get all of the red carpet glamour.
Oh, thank you for your donation. Excuse me for my beauty now, for I shall give you some ancient Native American wisdom here.
Fans waited eagerly to see the stars from Reservation Dogs and get a glimpse of season 2. The teens face many challenges, including growing up, cursing, and of course, getting help from aunties and uncles. Bobby Wilson, one of the creatives in the all-native writers' room, told us that humor is used to address serious issues in Indian country.
You have to actually address these things. But what we do in the writing of this show and in the creation of this series is we talk about things without actually talking about them. We show how people live and how people are dealing with the aftermath of these types of traumas.
Dalton Kramer, the character who committed suicide in the first season, says his character represents the epidemic in Indian country.
Not only does it affect grown-ups and children, it's just our friends, just kids from small towns dealing with whatever they're dealing with.
Willie Jack has some of the best comebacks in the series. Paulina Alexis, the actor who plays her, says Sterling Harjo, the co-creator of the series, encouraged her to improvise.
Well, yes, there is a script, but Sterling did give me the freedom to say whatever I want and whatever I want. Whatever Willie Jack would say, I would save your life, so.
This kind of classic Native humor really resonates with the audience at the premiere.
We got our own humor.
It was really funny, so I related to it so much.
Absolutely amazing. Well, the reservation crew revealed to us tonight that season 2 was green-lighted immediately. Now fans can only hope that season 3 will get that same treatment. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, Caitlin Onawa Boycell, ICT.
The movie Prey is a prequel to the movie Predator. It's the first film to be released in the Comanche language. Dan Trachtenberg is the director and Jane Myers is the producer. They both spoke to ICT's Mackenzie Allen Charmley.
To start with you, Jane, what was the impact of creating a film that increases the representation of Native cultures in general?
I think it has a great impact because I think it kind of raises the bar for representation. Because not only do you see people in front of the camera, and then you see people like me as the producer behind the camera, but you see people throughout every department because we had an internship program as well. And so sometimes that's when people are trying to get into film, that's all they need is just a foot in the door to get that experience.
And Dan, as director, were there any specific themes within the film that you were wanting audiences to take away?
Well, certainly the movie is very much about who is alpha, what is the strongest, what is the true threat, and the answer being adaptability and and it being not what you might think your first perception is a big part of that. And I wanted to make a movie that was a survival tale, and an adventure and action, horror, science fiction mashup, all of those things, but didn't want it to be just an awesome visceral experience. Really wanted it to have an emotional core. And so in thinking about that, wanted to give it the engine of a sports movie, of an underdog story. And thinking about that was like, okay, well, what if the protagonist is not someone that's usually the lead of a movie? And so thinking about Native American, but then even more particularly Comanche, that have often been relegated to playing sidekicks and villains in movies and never really the lead. And so that made this story sort of an obvious one.
Jane, what kind of measures were in place to ensure the historical and cultural accuracy of the film?
Well, we had a lot of measures in place, particularly me being Comanche and being on the set every day and producing this film. I was there to watch everything. I've been involved in the process since the beginning. And that's what's really important because, if there's something wrong with the script or if something needs to be changed, that's where it can be changed. But there's also like really important nuances that can be added when you're in production and you happen to see a scene and something's not just entirely right or working. We were working on the film and we just were like, well, what can make this scene? And I said, oh my gosh, Dan, it's at nighttime. And why don't we have Naru whistle? And it was like, it was kind of like an iffy thing. And in the middle of shooting, we maybe shot three times. We shot the scene about 3 times without the whistle. And I went running up and I'm like, Dan, remember this is the scene that we should have the whistle. And when Amber did that, and then when we went into post and, looking at it, it's just like, oh my God, that creepy whistle really makes it, because she's like, all out. She said, okay, here we go. I'm totally leveled up. I could care less what comes to get me. And she's using a Frenchman as bait, one of the French trappers, and she whistles. So to me, that's like kind of a defining moment that if you didn't have a Native person on there, would that ever be in the film? It wouldn't have that same kind of significance.
And just to wrap up, do you both have any advice for aspiring Indigenous creatives just trying to get into the industry?
I would say it's depending on what they're interested in. If it's filmmaking, if it's directing, what have you, I would say never stop making. Make with your friends, make constantly over and over again. And then when you've gotten to a point where that's reached its limit, try reaching out to professionals and making stuff more polished that way, as best and often as you can. But certainly looking for the one foot in the door. The film industry, more so than any other, it's like people hire not based on resume, or it's really based on, hey, we need this person. Oh, do you know this? Like, it really spreads. Families work in this industry constantly because it's all word of mouth. So it does so much. What Jane has done for the community in Calgary, it's like she's got so many people's foot in the door, and that just spreads. Keep in contact with networks of people and be on the lookout to just get that one foot in. One tiptoe in can really make a difference.
And right now there's so many filmmaking programs that you can get into to have your film made, because sometimes it's budget. And we know all Native films usually start out in their micro budget because we don't have a budget. We all just throw in together and try to make them. I've produced 2 shorts while we've been in post, since we've been back from Canada, helping my friends and working on things. And that's just, just keep working. Dan is totally right. No matter what level you are, you always have to just keep working. And that's what I do. Any way that I can help. Sundance has a good program. Illuminative has a good program. So just apply and try to get your picture made, because the fact that if you can get your content made, that increases our content. Because when people are looking for Native content, we don't have a lot to choose from. So just keep making content.
We also had a chance to speak to Amber Midthunder, who plays Naru, the female heroine. She talked about the impact she has as an Indigenous actress.
That to me is, listen, like, my job is not I'm not out there like making laws or, like helping sick people or anything like that as far as like community work. But I do feel like I find meaning in this job in exactly that way, that I think the way that Native people are represented and creating even just like job space for Native people, like hopefully movies like this or shows like Reservation Dogs and Rutherford Falls are doing, where it's like showcasing Native talent and how valuable that is as a resource. Because it's like you go back and we are historically like storytellers. That's like a hugely untapped resource for specifically this. And then the way that what good or bad representation can impact our people is so huge. So to be involved in that is like that's my like Navy SEAL, I feel like, purpose in like my career is I'm an actor, but really I'm doing this. So that's like, those are my goals.
You play the lead character, Naru, in the film. What parts of her do you see in yourself?
I think like she goes back and forth between believing in herself really intensely and then kind of wavering, like there's a point in the movie specifically when she's like, man, maybe I did like mess up. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And I feel like that kind of thing is something that I relate to a lot personally, where it's like there's moments, and I think everybody has that, where you're like, no, I know what I'm doing, and you feel so strong and so grounded in the direction that you're moving in. And then all of a sudden you get scared and you're like, well, maybe this isn't right. Like maybe I should quit, or maybe I'm whatever. And then you realize like, no, I can be everything that I think I can and everything that I want to be. And that's what I love about her. And especially like for Indigenous women to see as like a strong female figure, even as something as like a Predator movie, which is so like, it's like entertaining and all this stuff, but it's also like, it represents so much more than that.
In a press conference, you mentioned experiencing tons of new emotions throughout the filming process with COVID, filming in a different country, and even creating history. How were you able to handle everything?
It was just every day trying the absolute hardest. Like every day just waking up, and there was so much, I think for everybody who was involved, there was so much on everybody's plate. Like the mental health side of things, of like being in a place like that away from our loved ones and dealing with whatever in our personal lives that we were dealing with, but then also having this like big workload of like, to me the representation element was like never lost on how important that was. And like I wanted to do that. Like for some reason they picked me to do this, and I wanted to do that to the very best that it could possibly be done. And like and then it was like there's action and there's story and there's all this stuff, so it's like all those things. It was really just like focusing on the now, like what was immediately in front of you, and just like taking it step by step and like doing each thing that is right in front of you.
Were there any specific themes or messages within the film that you wanted audiences to take away?
There's a lot of elements that I'm really proud of. I think one is the relatability that I think the representation. So having a look inside of not just an Indigenous culture, but like a period piece Indigenous culture. Like you have kind of pictures of like the shows that I mentioned, that it's like Reservation Dogs and like Rutherford Falls. It's like those are both modern looks at like urban, Native society or res society or whatever, but it's modern day. Whereas this is all the way back in 1719. And so to represent Native people as still very human and intelligent and filled with different personalities and different, dynamics between people, like that I'm really proud of. And I think that's not something that you get a lot. And then just the idea that Native women have something to look at and feel like they can identify with and be like, wow, I can be strong and I can accomplish so much. Or like for res kids to like look at movies like this and have like tons of faces who look like theirs, that they can go like, wow, I can accomplish whatever I want to, and know that their space is needed and is valuable, like whether they want to be actors or writers or producers or run their own company or whatever. It's like there's so much that we can do. And the more that that space is taken up and that next generation see that, I feel like the more they'll believe that they have value. And to me, that's really important.
Do you have any advice for upcoming Indigenous actors and filmmakers wanting to get into the industry?
I would say to not be afraid to take up space and to know that you are valuable and that what you have to say is valuable and your perspective is unique, because right now there's like more Indigenous spaces being created, but it's not nearly done. So that resource and that perspective is so underseen, and it's so valuable, and it's so interesting. And also like tenacity, just like don't stop, keep making your own stuff and look at every resource that you can, like show up to casting calls, show up to whatever is out there. Like just don't quit, because there's a lot of other people who won't quit and will get opportunities. And so why not you?
That was Amber Midthunder. Ghosts is the story of three Kiowa boys who ran away from a boarding school in 1891. Jeff Palmer is the filmmaker.
This story was essentially told to me by my father, and he was told that story by his grandfather. So it's an oral tradition that has been passed down, I think, to many Kiowa youth, of these three boys who escaped a boarding school in Anadarko, Oklahoma. It was called the Anadarko Mission School in 1891. And incidentally, it was only about probably 10 days after Wounded Knee happened. And so I think one of the things that we tried to employ in this is the aspect of a ghost dance that was possibly happening, that the Kiowa tribe was doing in one of their camps, and that was one of the reasons why these three boys escaped. There's really nothing in terms of information on why they escaped, really nothing much about the boys themselves. And so what I wanted to do in thinking about this story always was creating some type of agency for these boys and giving them a voice, because in the historical record, there's literally just a paragraph written about the incident. And it's written from the perspective of, ethnographers or historians, people that are non-native. And there's not the names of the headmaster and the people that were part of the school are in there, but there isn't much on the boys themselves. And so we set out to make this short film to really focus on the escape from the school. We didn't have enough time, obviously, to go through this whole epic story of their journey back home. It has a tragic ending. Unfortunately, they ran away in January in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma weather can be pretty warm in January sometimes, and it can be deceiving. A cold front can come through, and that's what happened. And unfortunately, all three of these boys perished before they actually made it to the camp. They were very close to making it there, but they died of hypothermia. It's in that sense, it's tragic. But what we're focusing on in this short story is really the triumph of freedom of escaping a boarding school, which now is a topic that I think America is finally trying to reckon with, which seems sad when you think about it, in terms that we're actually, but this is America, right? In terms of dealing with their own skeletons in the closet, so to speak. And so I think that it's the right moment for this story to happen and for it to be told.
You mentioned that so little is known about these Kiowa boys. How do you artfully and intentionally tell their story when you don't actually know much about them?
I think about myself and my own experiences, as a Kiowa boy, growing up with my cousins, my brothers, my friends, the camaraderie that we had to have in the public school system in Carnegie, Oklahoma, was really, really important, because it wasn't a boarding school, but public schools back in the 1980s, when I was going to elementary school, were pretty hard places to be, and there was a lot of corporal punishment. But I try to transfer those types of feelings, that type of trauma. I mean, it it comes through, within the story, and the writing. The person, my writing partner, Austin Bunn, who's a fantastic screenwriter, took a lot of these ideas and feelings and really transferred them into something that's palatable to create who each of these boys are. But I think a lot of them come from me. A lot of them come from my father, my grandfather, who actually escaped from a boarding school when he was younger. So it's all of these people in my lives, I think, that really comprise these three boys.
We only have a short time left, actually about 30 seconds here. But tell us when this film will be released and how we can watch it.
So I'm in the editing process right now. We just wrapped on production last week. I'm hoping that by the end of the month, it will be prepared enough to go out to film festivals, and probably in January is when that whole festival run really starts. So around that time, January of 2023 is probably when we'll start seeing it. And then hopefully the feature will come a year after that. It takes time to get those things off the ground.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives. I'm Aaliyah Chavez.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.